War of the Rohirrim producer Philippa Boyens attempted to defend the film, destroying Tolkien's lore, claiming we can't ruin Tolkien's book. She also asserted that the movie is not woke, despite literally all the trailers indicating that it is woke, that it is pushing feminism, it is pushing the girl boss in the form of Hera, the unnamed daughter of Helm Hammerhand, that Boyens and her team over there at Warner Brothers decided to name Hera and make her the protagonist of the film rather than, Helm Hammerhand. Anyways, she did this in an interview with IGN, wrote this up over at phantompulse.com. I encourage you to head on over there, become a paid subscriber, help us to fight back against this woke ideology that is trying to destroy Tolkien's lore and film, television, books at large and destroy our culture. So as I said, she did this in an interview with IGN. She said, Professor Tolkien stated in his letters that the most compelling story is the untold story. If you actually believe that, why were you actually making this movie to begin with, right? And he told the story too anyways, right? It wasn't an untold story. He did tell the story. It's in the appendices. So this doesn't even make any sense to begin with her argument. Starting off on a wrong foot right here. Anyway, she goes on and says, we can't do anything to those books. Those books are going to stand as these masterpieces, hopefully, till the end of time. We can't ruin them. So people who come at you saying, oh, you ruined this or you ruined that. No, all we did was we presented you with an adaptation of this work. And some people will come to it and relate to it, and some people won't. And sometimes the criticism is justified, and sometimes it doesn't. That's what she said. I 100% disagree with this. These people are indeed trying to ruin these books. They are indeed trying to ruin the stories, and they do so by following the line of Kylo Ren, where he says, let the past die, kill it if you have to, and then they try to rewrite it in their own image. We see this over and over and over and over again. They take something that is profound, that is entertaining, that leads people upwards. It has beauty. It is inspiring. And what do? They try to inject their ideology into it. Their ideology that is ugly, that is disgusting, that leads people downwards. And that is exactly what they're doing right here. I mean, Gary Beekler, my good friend over at Nerdrotic, made it very clear that this movie is not just a boring slog. It reduces Helm Hammerhand to a guest star, but it's all about the girl boss. He even says this. They went with a girl boss. What Warner Brothers did manage to do was girl boss better. He says they girl bossed better than The Rings of Power. War of the Rohirrim is about some unnamed daughter who ends up being the impetus of the story, leading around a bunch of incompetent men who should have listened to her in the first place. What could have been the story centered on Helm Hammerhand and the tragic events that led to the naming of Helm's Deep turned into something else. He's very clear what happens in this movie. And this is what all the trailers, this is what all of the media promoting this film was telling us was going to happen. We saw all of this happening. Anyone with eyes to see, ears to hear, saw all of this stuff. And they are trying to ruin this stuff, as I said. And they do try to do it by changing people's perception, because not everyone is going to read the books. I mean, you go and ask someone on the street, I would wager they probably think that Aragorn is a guy who's reluctant to claim the crown as king, and he fears making the same mistake as his ancestor Isildur did, because that's the way he's depicted in Peter Jackson's beloved The Lord of the Rings trilogy. And don't get me wrong, I love Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy, but clearly there's things that it didn't get right, and they could have improved on. Aragorn is one of them. And a lot of people, I think, view that as how Tolkien wrote him. That's not how he wrote Aragorn. Aragorn's carrying around the shards of Narsil. Even when he meets Frodo, I forget the town. The town's blanking on me. And he tells, this is what Tolkien wrote, but I am Aragorn, and those verses go with that name. He drew out his sword, and they saw that the blade was indeed broken a foot below the hilt. Not much is it, Sam, said Strider, but the time is near when it shall be forged anew. Like, he wants to become the king. He is ready to fight. You fast forward to Rivendell, and Aragorn is telling this to Boromir. But now the world is changing once again. A new hour comes. Isildur's bane is found. That's the One Ring. Battle is at hand. The sword shall be reforged. I will come to Minas Tirith. He's saying he's going to come and become the king of Gondor. He then makes it clear, he also makes it clear he takes pride in being a chieftain of the Dunedain and protecting people from the evils haunting the world. But my home, such as I have, is in the north. For here the heirs of Valandil have ever dwelt in long line, unbroken, from father unto son for many generations. Our days have darkened and we have dwindled, but ever the sword has passed to a new keeper. And this I will say to you, Boromir, ere I end, lonely men are we, rangers of the wild, hunters, but hunters ever of the servants of the enemy, for they are found in many places, not in Mordor only. If Gondor Boromir has been a stalwart tower, we have played another part. Many evil things there are that your strong walls and bright swords do not stay. You know little of the lands beyond your bounds. Peace and freedom, do you say? The North would have known them little but for us. Fear would have destroyed them. But when dark things come from the houseless hills or creep from sunless woods, they fly from us. What roads would any dare to tread? What safety would there be in quiet lands or in the homes of simple men at night if the Dunedain were asleep or were all gone into the grave? So he clearly is taking pride from where he's coming from, and he's also indicating he's ready to go to Minas Tirith. He is waiting for the moment that the sword will be reforged. He's carrying it around with him. He knows what is his duty, and he's ready to take it up. In fact, he only actually travels with Frodo and doesn't go to Gondor because of his loyalty to Frodo. So that is how he's actually depicted in the books. That's not how he's depicted in the movie. And I would wager most people think about Aragorn in the way that he's depicted in the movie, because let's just be honest. We live in a time where film, television are more accessible and more popular than reading books and novels at this point. And so, yes, they are indeed trying to destroy this stuff. That's exactly what they're trying to do. They try to inject this ideology into this stuff to make you think that's the way it's always been. It's always been woke. It's always been gay. Whatever happens to be the du jour of the day, it's always been that way. When that's not the case. It's not the case at all. We also got comments from Boyen about why they decided to completely eschew from the books for this story. Which I will say they didn't completely do it. I guess that I would probably rephrase that a lot, because Gary does say in here, the first 20 minutes or so started out close enough to the books. He says the only major difference here is Helm didn't seem sorry about it at all in the books, but in this he does. So again, they're trying to change the characters, right? That's really how Helm was. That's not how he was. That's not how he was. What I think you'll see unfold, this is what Boyens, going back to Boyens, this is what she said. What I think you'll see unfold, hopefully, because this is where we work from, is that don't just change something arbitrarily. If we're going to change something, do it for good storytelling reasons, and anything you bring to it, make it feel real, make it feel authentic. And clearly they did not do that. They literally invented a character, made her the protagonist in order to push feminism. Like, let's be real. Let's be real. This is all a bunch of commie gobbledygook. Bunch of word games to deflect from what they are actually doing. She later added, make sure you know what that reason is, and it's a really good storytelling reason why you're having to make that change. If you're adding, make it as authentic as you can possibly make it. So we didn't just draw upon Éowyn for Hera, we drew upon women from early English history that Tolkien himself would have been familiar with. And then she said, so there's nothing woke about this, guys, if you're out there. It's clearly as woke. It's very obvious that it is woke. I mean, the whole point of putting Hera as the main protagonist is a signal that your movie is indeed woke, because you are giving Hera the role of Helm Hammerhand. You're giving Hera the role of Freyleaf. I mean, there's so much wrong with this. I mean, apparently, according to Gary, Hera defeats Wolf in single combat, and that is how the war ends. It's not Gondor coming to relieve the siege of the Dunlettings on Helm's Deep. It's not Freyleaf coming down from the north to sneak attack Wolf at Edoras and defeat him and kill him. It's Hera killing him. They clearly have a message that they want to send. It's clearly a feminist message. I mean, she's talked about this in previous interviews. The reason why they chose Hera is because they saw themselves in her, in the self-insert character. What's absolutely hilarious, though, is these people will admit that they didn't need to make any of these changes. They didn't need to make any of these changes at all. She said this, it's an interesting piece of storytelling, even if you just follow the bare threads that are in the book. And that's because it starts out huge and quite epic. If they had just done a straight adaptation of what is in the appendices, they would have had an absolute banger of a movie. It would have been great. Word of mouth would be spreading. People would be praising it. Instead, what have we got? 2 million international box office, over 40% decline in the predictions coming into this weekend. Film's going to bomb. All because they chose to inject their feminist ideology into this movie. And now they're lying about it too, which makes it even worse. She also wildly misinterpreted Tolkien's comments about wanting other individuals to work within and expand on the mythology he created in The Lord of the Rings. She said this, Tolkien didn't just write books, he wrote an entire mythology, a vast, incredible work which is so detailed and so complex and works on so many different layers. Yeah, that's why you're literally rewriting it, destroying it with feminism. And you can just leave that alone and not touch it. But he himself did not want that. This is not true. And he himself said that he wanted other minds to come to it, bringing music and art and drama to it. So he had a sense of that at some stage, because what he knew about myths is that it cannot be immutable. So I have no idea where she's getting this from. This idea that he wanted other minds to come to his work. We do have this from Tolkien in his letter 131 to Milton Waldman. It's pretty clear, I think, regarding The Lord of the Rings, which this, again, the story is in the appendices. But he wrote this. It is not possible, even at great length, to pot The Lord of the Rings in a paragraph or two. It was begun in 1936, and every part has been written many times. Hardly a word in its 600,000 or more has been unconsidered. And the placing, size, style, and contribution to the whole of all the features, incidents, and chapters has been laboriously pondered. I do not say this in recommendation. It is, I feel, only too likely that I am deluded, lost in a web of vain imaginings of not much value to others. In spite of the fact that a few readers have found it good on the whole, what I intend to say is this. I cannot substantially alter the thing. I have finished it. It is off my mind. The labor has been colossal, and it must stand or fall practically as it is. That doesn't sound like someone who wants other people meddling with his work. It doesn't sound like he wants other people creating new stories in his mythology. It sounds like someone who is like, I wrote this is mine, and now the work must stand or fall on its own, and I won't really be making any adjustments to it. And he didn't really make any adjustments. Now, obviously, he went back and made some adjustments to The Hobbit, so it was in line with Lord of the Rings. But for the most part, he left a lot. He didn't really change the Lord of the Rings. And he certainly didn't say that he wanted other people to come in and make their own stories within the Lord of the Rings. And he definitely didn't want people radically altering them. I mean, there's a whole letter where he goes through a movie script that this other guy wrote, and he just absolutely obliterates the guy for making all of these changes. He would likely do the same to this War of the Rohirrim script. But that's what these people are doing now. They're just straight up lying in order to save their own skins. I think they know. They're going to IGN. They're doing an interview with IGN, desperately trying to get people to come see this movie. And people aren't. I mean, they probably see the internal projections. They probably see the sentiment online. They saw the international numbers. This movie is going to fail and fail hard, all because of their own pride and arrogance, very similar to what we've been seeing with the Rings of Power. The solution is very easy. J.R.R. Martin even says it. Stick to the source material and you will find success. There's a reason why you're trying to do an adaptation of the source material. It's because the source material is good and people love it. So maybe stick to that. But let me know what you guys make of this. Let me know in the comments below. Remember to always be charitable, especially to each other, and to always, always speak the truth.